Have you ever thought that a stolen wallet could be the key to unraveling an affair? My wife's morning call seemed innocent, but soon I uncovered a lie so big you wouldn't wish it on your enemy. What's going to happen next? Well, you're about to find out. Just a few weeks back, on a regular Thursday morning, I was caught up in our usual hectic routine, trying to get our two kids ready for school. It was around 7:30 when our morning chaos got interrupted by the sudden blare of the phone. I paused, feeling a spark of curiosity as I wondered who could possibly be calling this early. When I glanced at the caller ID, I noticed it displayed a strange area code, which only made me more intrigued. "Hello," I answered, cautiously bringing the phone up to my ear. To my surprise, it was my wife, Lisa, on the other end. That struck me as odd since we had just talked the previous night. Lisa works for a small marketing firm, and I usually handle things at home, so her calling out of the blue had me on high alert. She's always out and about, working for a printing company downtown, while I work from home and take care of the kids. Despite having completely different schedules, we make it work, and it's helped us build a pretty comfortable life. Our home is a cozy 4-bedroom place in the suburbs, complete with a swimming pool, and we're fortunate enough to have a great circle of friends. But then, Lisa got straight to the point. She told me that last night, while grabbing a newspaper in the hotel lobby, someone had stolen her purse. "Can you cancel our credit cards right away and order replacements?" I already spoke to my boss, Kelly, and she's arranging to have new company Amex cards sent to me overnight, so I'll have them before I leave tomorrow. "She's even transferring some extra money to help me get by," she said, sounding anxious. "You're usually so careful with your stuff. What exactly happened?" I asked, feeling a bit confused. "Well, I made the mistake of leaving my purse on the counter while I went to grab a couple more magazines. When I got back, it was gone. The cashier was busy with another customer and didn't notice anything strange. My driver's license was in there too, but the hotel staff is already checking the dumpsters nearby. I really hope they find it, otherwise, I might be stuck using a taxi for my meeting today," she explained. "Don't worry, I'll take care of canceling the cards right now." "And I'm sorry you're going through this," I replied, trying to comfort her. "Thanks, hon." Other than about $1,200 in cash, there wasn't much else of real value in the purse, so I think we'll be fine. Most of my makeup is still up in the room, so at least I'll be ready for tomorrow morning's presentation. "How are the kids?" "I really miss all of us being together," she added. Now, let me rewind to what happened about 6 weeks back. I managed to get our credit cards canceled before any fraudulent charges were made. Unfortunately, the wallet with her driver's license and other non-credit cards hadn't turned up, but I pushed that worry to the back of my mind. Life just went on as usual after that, but there's something significant I need to share today. While going through some papers, I stumbled upon a statement from Lisa's Fidelity account. She has a separate investment fund set up from the inheritance she received when her parents tragically passed away a few years ago. I've always respected her privacy when it comes to this account, but as I was searching for our home insurance policy, I came across a folder containing monthly statements from her personal account. I remembered that her inheritance was around $350,000 back when her parents died, and I couldn't help but feel curious about how much it had grown. To my pleasant surprise, it had increased to over $400,000. As I continued to scan through the statement, a withdrawal of $3,000 from the money market account about 6 weeks ago immediately caught my eye. I couldn't help but wonder where that money had gone, so I decided to dig a bit deeper into her financial activities. To my utter surprise, I found out that she had written a hefty check to a local jewelry store just a few days after losing her purse in the same city. I couldn't stop thinking about what she might have bought there. She hadn't mentioned purchasing anything for me, nor had she talked about getting jewelry for anyone else. Sure, she has a brother, but I couldn't see why he'd need a $3,000 gift. After mulling it over for a while, I turned to the computer and pulled up the jewelry store's website. I quickly scribbled down their phone number, figuring I'd give them a call to find out more. Picking up the phone, I dialed the number, and a woman on the other end answered, introducing herself as a representative of the store. I gave her my name and mentioned the transaction I was inquiring about, explaining that we had run into an issue with the purchase and wanted to know if there was some kind of warranty. She tapped away on her keyboard, searching for the details. Then she asked me what kind of problem we were having with the rings. Rings? I thought, completely baffled. What kind of rings could she possibly have bought? Luckily, the woman filled in the blanks before I could even ask. "Oh, yes, I remember this transaction," she said. "When your wife visited, she was visibly upset. She mentioned that her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen and was looking to replace them. It wasn't easy, she wanted something specific. She initially used the company's credit card as a temporary hold and later sent us a check to cover the full cost. Now that you've brought up an issue with the rings, I want to let you know that our store provides a 90-day warranty for such situations. Is it possible the diamond setting has come loose?" This completely threw me for a loop. She mentioned replacing her wedding and engagement rings, but my wife never told me that they were lost, she only talked about her purse being stolen. I needed a moment to let this new information sink in. "Listen," I finally said to the woman, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to have a conversation with my wife about this before we decide on anything further. I'll get back to you later." With that, I ended the call. She sounded a bit confused, but my own confusion was far more intense. It was starting to become clear that those rings had to be in her purse when it was stolen. But then, why was she carrying them in her purse to begin with, unless she wanted to hide the fact that she was married? As far as I knew, there were no work-related reasons for her to conceal her marital status. Unless, of course, she was trying to appear single in certain social situations. Disturbing thoughts swirled through my mind. Could she have been considering having an affair while she was away? Just the idea made my stomach twist into knots. We've been married for 11 years and have 2 wonderful kids, Adam, who's 8, and Sophie, who just turned 6. I thought we had a perfect marriage and the kind of family people dream about. Our personal life seemed satisfying to me, at least up until now. Lisa usually travels once a month, staying out of town for a couple of nights. If she had intentions of doing something like that, she might have seen those trips as the perfect cover. It seemed that losing those rings had really shaken her up, pushing her to get replacements that looked almost identical to the originals. I had bought those rings with my modest income, so they weren't anything too extravagant, and having replicas made didn't cost a fortune. She could have reported the loss to our insurance company, but then I probably would have found out. And if her purse had actually been stolen at the hotel, shouldn't she have reported it there? I couldn't help but wonder what exactly she claimed was taken. I decided to look up the hotel's contact number and gave them a call. I asked if they had any record of my wife's purse theft. To my surprise, they confirmed that they did have a written report on file. I requested a copy, and they faxed it over shortly after. The report was written and signed by Lisa herself. In it, she stated that her purse was stolen while she was dancing in the hall. She had left it at the booth where she'd been sitting, and when she came back, it was gone. Interestingly, Lisa specifically mentioned that she didn't want to involve the police. As I read through this report, my thoughts started to spin. The implications of what I was uncovering were staggering. She had lied to me, not just about the rings going missing, but by making up an entire story about how it happened. Sure, there could be some other explanation, but my mind kept circling back to darker possibilities. I realized that I had to get to the bottom of this. If I didn't find out the real story behind those rings, I knew it would gnaw at me until I went mad. One thing was becoming clearer by the minute: those rings had to be in her purse when she was dancing with some unknown man. That incident happened weeks ago, and now she was gearing up for another trip in just a few days. I needed to dig up more details about her upcoming trip and try to piece together what she usually did during her evenings away from home. If she was involved with other men, maybe losing those rings had been a wake-up call for her, forcing her to rethink her behavior. I had to accept that if I discovered she was cheating, it would almost certainly mean the end of our marriage. I hated to think about how this would affect our kids. She was a great mother, no doubt about that. But I couldn't stand the thought of her getting custody, especially since her job had her traveling so much. My mind was racing, trying to catch on to any possible clues that could tell me what she was really up to during her trips. Did she practice safe sex, or was she willing to take risks? I figured she would use protection. After all, she wouldn't want to bring home an infection or deal with the possibility of an unwanted pregnancy. I mean, I'd had a vasectomy after our second child was born, so getting pregnant by me was off the table. And since she couldn't rely on these men having protection, she probably carried her own supply. But where did she keep them? It seemed unlikely she'd store them at our house or in her car, so the office made the most sense. She likely took them with her on her business trips. I knew she carried her work papers, laptop, and presentation materials in a large briefcase that she kept at her office. When she had an early morning flight, she'd usually bring the bag home the night before so she could pack it into her suitcase for the airport. This detail was key. I needed to find an opportunity to search that briefcase before her next trip. I was really hoping her upcoming travel involved an early morning flight. I made a conscious decision to stay calm and collected, making sure not to give away any hint that something was troubling me. As the kids came home from school, I found myself juggling various tasks, which helped keep my mind off my growing suspicions. Still, the unsettling thought of her possible infidelity lingered in the back of my head. When Lisa returned from work, I was in the middle of preparing dinner and, to be honest, things were a bit chaotic. I ended up spilling a dish of beans, creating a mess all over the kitchen floor. Between cleaning up that mess and managing the kids, I must have looked pretty frazzled. Luckily, she didn't seem to notice anything off about my behavior. Once the kitchen chaos finally settled and I got everything cleaned up, I greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. We then sat down at the table, as we usually did, for dinner and our routine conversation. Given how we normally went about things, I didn't expect her to suspect anything about my curiosity surrounding her upcoming trip. "So, you're heading out again in a couple of days?" I asked casually. "Yeah," she replied, sounding less than thrilled. "Same old routine. I'm not exactly excited about it." Her response made me want to dig a little deeper. "If you're not enjoying it, have you thought about applying for a different role? You've been with the company long enough and know the ins and outs. I bet you'd be great at almost any position there." She mentioned that she wanted to gain more experience before transitioning to a desk job. I decided to play on her emotions a bit. "The kids and I really miss you when you're away," I added, hoping to stir up a little guilt. "I know, I'm sorry," she said sympathetically. "I miss you guys too." Trying to get more information, I continued, "So, where exactly are you headed this time? Will you be leaving in the morning? Maybe we could spend a bit of time together before you go." I looked her in the eyes as I spoke, making sure our kids were within earshot. I tried to seem as normal as possible, though my stomach was churning so badly that eating was becoming a struggle. She didn't seem to catch on to my tension, as her reaction was perfectly casual. I briefly wondered if she had a nervous stomach too, but she appeared to be eating without much enjoyment. Maybe my suspicions were baseless, but I still couldn't shake the urge to search through her briefcase, hoping it might reveal something about her loyalty. "I'm just going to Denton this time. I'll be leaving tomorrow morning around 7:30, she said. "I need something to keep me going until I get back on Friday," she added with a playful wink. I played along, responding in the same light-hearted manner, trying to keep things feeling normal. To my surprise, she actually blushed. Her comment about bringing the briefcase home the night before suggested she wasn't planning to stop by the office before heading to the airport. Based on her genuine attitude in front of me and the kids, you'd think that either she hadn't been involved in anything shady during her trips, or she had gotten really good at hiding it. I intended to uncover the truth when I got the chance to look through her briefcase the night before her flight. When Lisa returned home, she seemed to be in an unusually good mood. She parked her car next to mine in the garage, like she always did, and looked visibly excited. I couldn't tell if her excitement was due to our earlier conversation or something else entirely. As she stepped into the house, I noticed she didn't bring her briefcase inside, which meant it was probably still in the car. I was busy prepping dinner, so we both sat down at the table. Out of the blue, she casually asked, "Hey, could you grab my suitcase from the garage after we finish eating?" "Of course," I replied, doing my best to hide any suspicion in my voice. "Are you all set for your trip?" she asked, trying to put me at ease. "Oh yeah, it's just another routine trip. I've got my briefcase in the car, all ready to go. I'll pack an overnight bag with the essentials," I said, keeping up the pretense of normalcy. I casually added, "Do you have any plans while you're gone?" "No, the kids and I will just stick to our regular routine during the week. Maybe we can plan something fun as a family for the weekend," she responded, sounding genuinely enthusiastic about the idea. "Sounds like a plan," I replied, meaning it. After we finished dinner, she helped me clear the table and load the dishwasher. Once everything was tidied up, she headed off to the bedroom to start packing, while I made my way to the garage to fetch her suitcase. I peeked inside the car, but I didn't see the briefcase on the seats, which meant it had to be locked up in the trunk. That was pretty much what I had expected, and I already had a plan in mind to get into it later that night. Carrying her suitcase back into the bedroom, I casually asked, "Hey, do you know where the car keys are? Looks like my tire's losing air again. If I take it over to the station, Jerry can fix it up right away." She paused for a second, looking a bit puzzled, but then reached into her purse and handed me the keys. "Why don't you just use the spare tire? Isn't that what it's for?" she suggested. I shook my head and responded firmly, "Yeah, the spare is for emergencies, but since we have time, I think it's best to get this fixed properly." Before she could change her mind, I headed straight back to the garage. I quickly backed her car out and drove off toward the junction station owned by Jerry, my old buddy from school. When I pulled up in front of one of the service bays, I gave the horn a quick honk to get his attention. Jerry looked up, noticed me, and came over to open the bay door, waving me in before closing it behind us. "What's up, man?" Jerry asked, curiosity in his eyes. "Well, I told you the tire needed fixing," I started, "but really, I just needed a little time to check something else." Jerry raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing something was off. "Problems at home, huh?" he asked knowingly. "Maybe," I admitted, not wanting to say too much just yet. I popped the trunk, grabbed Lisa's briefcase, and set it on a nearby workbench before unlocking it. Seeing a customer approach, Jerry gave me a quick nod. "I've got to help this customer." "Take your time, my friend," he said as he headed toward the small shop attached to the station. Nodding back, I got to work, meticulously searching through the briefcase, careful not to disturb anything. My hands roamed through the pockets on the lid, almost as if on autopilot. That's when I found it, a small package that immediately caught my eye. I pulled it out, and my heart dropped. It was an open pack of contraceptives, with 3 pieces already missing. My worst fears had just been confirmed. Taking a deep breath, I put the package back exactly where I found it and closed the briefcase. Then, I placed it back in the trunk and shut it securely, just as Jerry returned. "So, did you find what you were looking for?" "What's going on?" he asked, his concern clear. "Yeah," I said, my voice a mix of sadness and disappointment. "Mind if I hang around a bit longer? Maybe you can check the tire pressure for real while I act like I'm fixing things." Jerry gave me a curious look but didn't press for details. He was a good friend, loyal and understanding. While he checked the tire, I pulled out of the bay and made my way to a nearby gas station. I filled up the tank, not knowing when I'd be doing that for her again. My thoughts were a jumble of gratitude for Jerry's support and the heartache of what I'd just discovered as I drove back home. As I pulled back into the garage, a sense of darkness clouded my thoughts, and a wave of panic washed over me, fueled by anger and frustration. I struggled to comprehend how she could betray our marriage, our children, and me in such a way. Once I managed to push those emotions aside, I knew I had to focus on my next steps. To secure custody of our kids, I needed solid evidence of her infidelity and misconduct. No matter how she had failed as a partner, I couldn't deny that she was a good mother. The kids deserved a loving maternal figure in their lives, even if it meant she'd be granted visitation rights. My main objective was to gain full legal custody. Eventually, she'd have to explain the reasons for our divorce to her brother and all our friends. As I walked into the house, I called out from the bedroom, "Everything's taken care of. It was just a minor issue with a nail." "Okay, thanks," she replied, still avoiding direct eye contact. Needing to calm my nerves, I headed to the kitchen, grabbed a beer, and then settled into the family room where the kids were absorbed in a TV show. About 30 minutes later, Lisa joined us, sitting beside me on the couch. By then, my emotions had settled, but a wave of sadness hit me as I realized our once happy family life was about to change forever. To my surprise, Lisa moved closer, snuggling up to me. She whispered in my ear, "Are you ready for tonight?" Taking a sip of my beer, I replied, "I think so, but my stomach's acting up." "Oh, that's too bad, honey," she said sympathetically, holding me tight. She softly added, "I love you." I instinctively wrapped my arm around her shoulders, feeling torn inside. Despite everything, a small part of her still seemed to care. I couldn't help but wonder why she had done this to us. Was it about excitement, or was she looking for something I couldn't provide? I might never get the full answer, but what was certain was that my trust in her was shattered. We put the kids to bed together, and as she kissed our little angels goodnight, I couldn't shake the thought that by morning, she'd be gone. The kids were already used to her frequent trips, so they didn't seem too troubled. That night, we made love, but the passion was missing, replaced by an emptiness I couldn't ignore. Noticing my unease, Lisa asked, "Is your stomach still bothering you, dear?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, but I'll be fine," I replied, hoping against hope that she'd choose us over this trip. Desperately, I asked, "Do you really have to go on this trip?" Deep down, I wished this whole situation was just a nightmare I'd wake up from. She sighed and replied apologetically, "I'm sorry, but this trip is necessary. I'll try to finish up quickly and be back as soon as I can. I'm really looking forward to spending the weekend with you all." With a heavy heart, I sighed, "Okay, it's time for some sleep. You've got an early flight. I'm going to take a quick shower now so I don't have to deal with it in the morning." "All right," she said and headed to the bathroom. On an impulse, I went over to her suitcase to see what she'd packed. At first glance, the clothes on top looked professional enough, but as I dug a little deeper, I was shocked to find some of her most seductive lingerie and a small black cocktail dress she always looked stunning in. Feeling conflicted, I carefully put everything back as it was, closed the suitcase, and went back to bed. I couldn't sleep a wink that night, and when I heard Lisa moving around at 5 a.m., I stayed in bed, choosing not to get up and say goodbye like I usually did. A mix of exhaustion and sadness weighed me down. She leaned over to give me a kiss on the cheek before leaving and asked softly, "Still not feeling well, honey?" I simply nodded, unable to voice the storm of emotions brewing inside me. As soon as I heard the garage door close, I finally got out of bed and headed to the shower. I knew the day ahead was going to be tough. After seeing the kids off to school and having a quick breakfast, I grabbed the phone book and started looking up private investigators in the yellow pages. My main priority was to find an agency with a nationwide reach, preferably one that had an office in the city Lisa was visiting. After calling a few places, I eventually found one with a branch right in her destination. I set up a meeting with them for that same morning, hoping they could help uncover the truth. Next on my to-do list was to find a divorce attorney. A friend had recommended a specific lawyer, so I tracked down his contact information and gave him a call. We scheduled an appointment for that afternoon, and I hoped he could guide me through the difficult road ahead. When I arrived at the private investigator's office, I laid out my concerns and arranged for them to follow Lisa during her time away. I handed them a photo of her, along with the details of her travel route, to help with identification. They assured me they'd gather photos and provide a full report of her activities once her business day wrapped up. For seamless communication, they agreed to send updates via email to their office in Denton and promised a complete report by Monday morning. Satisfied with their commitment, I made a substantial upfront payment for their services. They warned me that capturing photos might not always be possible, but they'd do their best to get as much incriminating evidence as they could. I accepted their terms, figuring it was better than nothing. My afternoon meeting with the lawyer went pretty much as expected. He explained that in our state, divorce follows a no-fault principle, so there wouldn't be a need to assign blame. However, since I'm the primary caregiver for our kids, I'd likely be awarded custody. It was important for me to know that Lisa would still receive ample visitation rights. Our property would also be divided evenly, a straight 50-50 split. There wouldn't be any need for alimony since our incomes were relatively similar, but because I'd have custody, Lisa would have to pay child support. Her inheritance wasn't something I was interested in, I wanted her to keep that for herself. My main concern was ensuring the kids were taken care of. I instructed the lawyer to prepare the necessary paperwork to be served to Lisa on Monday, citing irreconcilable differences. I also requested that she agree to leave our house immediately after the divorce. The lawyer confirmed that, as the children's guardian, I had the right to make that demand. We also agreed that once the kids turned 18, we'd sell the house and split the proceeds. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of relief. Life would go on for me and the kids, and Lisa would have to deal with the consequences of her choices. I decided not to take immediate action on our finances, insurance, or other legal matters. I figured I'd have enough time to handle those details once she was served with the divorce papers. Besides, with her inheritance, I wasn't too worried about her share of our joint savings. When it was time for the school day to end, I made my way back home to meet the kids at the bus stop. On Friday afternoon, when Lisa finally returned, I casually offered to take care of her laundry, but she declined, insisting she'd do it herself later. I couldn't help but smirk, knowing full well why she was so eager to handle the laundry. She needed to keep her secret life under wraps, no matter the cost. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Lisa expressed concern over my ongoing stomach troubles and suggested I go see a doctor. "This has been going on for too long," she stressed, her voice full of worry. Trying to keep things light, I playfully told her that I planned to try a new medication a friend had recommended. I added that I was hopeful it would take care of the problem and bring me back to my old self soon. When we embraced, she whispered softly, saying she missed me dearly. Monday came around, and after the kids left for school and Lisa headed to work, I received a call from the detective agency. They informed me that the report was ready. I assured them I'd be there shortly, and within half an hour, I was sitting in their office, going over the details with the manager. He mentioned that a report, along with attached photos, had been faxed over from their Denton office that morning. Though he hadn't had a chance to read the full document, he said a quick skim and glance at the photos made it clear that the findings were highly incriminating. I took a copy of the report and began reading through it. It identified the subject as Lisa Barton. According to the document, surveillance on her started at 5:17 p.m. on Wednesday, June 16, in the lobby of the Denton Marriott Hotel. Her identity was confirmed by comparing her appearance to a photo provided by their Merville office. As I read on, I noticed that the report mentioned she was wearing her company badge, further verifying her identity. The agents had also tracked her movements and noted that she was carrying a briefcase when she stepped into the elevator. A hotel staff member accompanied her and confirmed her arrival at room 414 at 5:23 p.m. The report clearly emphasized that she was alone at this time. Included in the report was a photograph labeled Exhibit 1A, showing Lisa dressed in professional attire as she entered the room. From the photo, it was evident she was still wearing her rings. The picture was discreetly captured using a mobile phone. The report then explained that the agents had rented a room across from hers to monitor her activities. At 6:31 p.m., they received a signal indicating she had left her room and was heading toward the elevator. A minute later, at 6:32 p.m., she emerged from the elevator and entered the lobby. The report described her outfit in Example 1B. When I looked at Example 1B, it was clear she had changed into a small black cocktail dress paired with high heels. She was also wearing the necklace I had given her for our 10th anniversary. But what stood out the most was the absence of her wedding rings on her left hand. The photo left no doubt, she wasn't wearing them. The report mentioned again that the agents had rented a room directly across from hers to keep a close eye on her. A little later, at 8:51 p.m., another photo, labeled Exhibit 1D, captured a moment that hit me like a punch to the gut. In the picture, Lisa was tightly embracing a man, the two of them locked in a passionate kiss while seated in a booth. The intensity between them was unmistakable. The report noted that both left the restaurant shortly after, taking the elevator up to Lisa's floor. The final image, labeled Exhibit 1E, showed the moment they entered her room, number 414. In that photo, Lisa looked slightly intoxicated but undeniably happy with how the evening had unfolded. At 11:13 p.m., the man finally left Lisa's room and exited the building. The report included the license plate number of a car registered to an Alexander B. Tate, who lived at 1424 Elia Drive in Denton. Interestingly, Alexander B. Tate was a married man with 2 young children. As I continued to sift through the details, it became clear that Lisa had repeated the same behavior the next night, but this time with a different man. The report was signed by one of the investigators from Denton, and as I read on, a deep sense of anxiety and resentment welled up inside me. It was undeniable, my wife had been leading a promiscuous lifestyle every time she was away from home. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This was a betrayal far worse than anything I could have imagined. Not even the loss of her wedding rings had made her stop and think about what she was doing. After settling the bill with the private investigator, I made sure to take 2 extra copies of the report, which were stored on a CD, and left the office. When I got back home, I immediately called my divorce attorney. I needed to know where things stood with the paperwork. He confirmed that everything was ready for filing, and without wasting a moment, I gave the green light to move forward. I specifically requested that the papers be served to her publicly at her workplace the next day. The attorney assured me it could be arranged smoothly and asked for her work address, which I promptly provided. I made my intentions clear, I wanted to humiliate her as part of the legal process. Serving her at work was not just about revenge, it was about delivering a form of justice for what she had done. That night, there was nothing resembling love between us. Lisa seemed to sense that something was off, possibly suspecting that I had discovered something troubling. While she didn't directly ask, she did express hope that I'd feel better soon. Strangely, she also seemed a bit reserved, but I chose to ignore it and kept my thoughts to myself. The next morning, I woke up after a restless night. I buried myself in work on the computer until I heard the kids stirring. Then, I went to the kitchen to make breakfast. After we ate, I said goodbye to Lisa as she was heading out to work. She came over for a hug and a kiss, but I responded with a half-hearted embrace, playfully urging her to leave quickly. In that moment, I sensed she might have had a gut feeling about what was coming. As I closed the door behind her, I caught a glimpse of tears welling up in her eyes, and she whispered, "I love you." Once she left, a wave of sadness crashed over me, and I felt the urge to break down. But I quickly pulled myself together. The kids needed me, and I had to get them ready for the school bus. Around 10:45 a.m., the phone rang, breaking up the morning routine. I glanced at the caller ID, it was from Lisa's workplace. I picked up but didn't say a word. There was a brief pause on the other end as she realized I wasn't going to make this easy for her. In a shaky, whispered voice, Lisa finally said, "I'm sorry." The line went dead shortly after, and I stayed silent, not responding. Lisa didn't come home that night, and I couldn't help but wonder if she was still playing her deceitful game, indifferent to the damage she had caused. While I knew my anger was justified, a small part of me questioned if I'd been too harsh on her. The kids, clearly upset by their mother's absence, kept asking where she was. To lift their spirits, I took them out for dinner at McDonald's. By the time we got back home, they were exhausted and went straight to bed. The next morning, Lisa called with a request. "Can I come home and pack my things? Can we talk?" she asked, her voice filled with a mixture of desperation and sadness. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of guilt, but it quickly faded. I replied calmly, "Why don't you come by between 9 o'clock and noon?" I added, "That way, the kids and I won't be here. As for talking, I'm willing to meet you one-on-one at my lawyer's office, but only after you've signed, notarized, and returned the divorce papers. Then, I'll hear whatever you have to say." I heard a sob on the other end of the line before she managed to whisper, "Fine." And just like that, the call ended. She signed the divorce documents, and 6 months later, our marriage was officially over. As it turned out, she had gotten pregnant during her affair. She had tried to hide it from her last lover, but when contraception failed, her secret unraveled. Given that she was nearing the end of her childbearing years, I realized that even if I hadn't discovered her infidelity through the lost rings, the truth would have come out eventually. I heard rumors that she was dating again. If she ever gets close to remarrying, I've considered giving her future spouse a heads up about her past. It just doesn't seem fair for her to deceive and hurt another person the way she did me. We eventually had a meeting at my lawyer's office where I laid out my thoughts. She begged me to reconsider the divorce, saying how hard it was not to have unrestricted access to our children. But I explained that my trust in her was shattered. Then she revealed that she had been seeing a psychologist, who diagnosed her with nymphomania. She insisted that she now had her impulses under control. Despite her explanation, I told her it wasn't enough. Even if she had her urges in check now, the fact that she hadn't sought help earlier showed a lack of effort on her part. If she had addressed her cravings from the start, maybe things wouldn't have spiraled to this point. When I left the lawyer's office, she was still crying. A while later, a mutual friend from school, who now works at a nightclub, mentioned that he often sees my ex-wife at the club on weekend nights. She's there with different men, behaving in ways that only deepened my sadness. It broke my heart knowing my children have such an irresponsible mother. I started to wonder if she ever truly overcame her nymphomania. Not long after, a friend of Lisa's called to tell me she was in poor health. She said my ex-wife needed help because she had contracted herpes. Meanwhile, it seemed she was still living her reckless lifestyle. I sympathized, but I firmly told her friend that I couldn't help, nor did I want to. Lisa had chosen this path, and with it, the risks and consequences. As for me, I started dating again and have met someone who seems truly special. She's around my age, and like me, she's been through a divorce. She discovered her ex-husband's infidelity and didn't tolerate it, which shows a kind of strength I genuinely admire. It seems my kids have taken a liking to her too. It feels like a natural progression, and I can't help but think it might just be a matter of time before I consider taking this relationship to the next level.